Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great Friday morning. It's nice and sunny out there. So it's a great day to go prospecting. Um, Before I get started with today's training, I want to remind all the agents of our upcoming commercial classes. It's a series of 6. I know a lot of reminders have been going out and a lot of agents have signed up. However, if you have not, please email me your interest because I have to send that list, the email and the agent's name to Coldwell Banker Home Office, which is corporate. And then they're going to send a registration out to every individual that that is interested with the link and stuff. So it's a little bit of a different process. So please, if you're interested in learning about commercial real estate and want to join in on these sessions, email me. Briefly, it's going to be every other Thursday starting from, I believe it's February 16th. Every class is going to be 1 hour and it's going to be at 10 a.m. Okay. Every other Thursday starting from February 16th on Thursdays at 10 a.m., roughly about an hour. These are great sessions because you're going to have the capabilities of taking notes, and it's going to be interactive. So Josh Best and Ashley Wilson is our ambassadors to the commercial Coldwell Banker commercial, and you will have capabilities of asking them your particular questions and stuff. So please, if you're interested, email me sooner rather than later. Okay. So today we're going to be going over a couple of topics. The first topic is a new article that just came out on CAR website, and it's pertaining to updating disclosure documents. We'll dive into that right now too. And then also recently we've been getting some inquiries from agents as to the process and the steps of a real estate transaction in perspective of both a buyer and a seller's agent. So we're going to go into that too. And then at the very end, we're going to have a Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, please jot them down on a notepad or put them into the chat box. And Michelle and I will do our best to answer every question once we've gone through the training. Okay, so please mute yourself so we can go swiftly through the training, and then we can get all your questions answered at the very end. Okay. Okay, so let's get started with the disclosure documents. Okay, so can you go up a little bit, Michelle?
Right there.
Oh yeah, the duty to modify. Well, actually, this is the second slide. The first slide is the previous one. The header's on top. No, go down a little bit. Keep going. So the duty right there, duty to disclose. So we as agents know our duty to disclose to the other parties and getting these documents from the seller, ensuring that the seller fills them out properly and disclosing anything that they know that is wrong with the property or has any effect of the property and stuff. So I'm not going to get into depth about it, but I'm going to read just a little bit what it states. The seller of a residential property with 1 to 4 units has a legal obligation to disclose to a buyer known material information affecting the value or desirability of the property by completing a statutory form called the Real Estate Transfer Disclosure, which we know as a TDS, and a contractual obligation also to complete a seller property questionnaire, which is a SPQ. So we don't need to get more into depth about this. You all know that during the transaction, you give these documents to the seller, let them fill it out, and then this you have to disclose to the buyer's agent and the buyer as soon as you get into contract. Okay, move on to the next. Duty to modify a disclosure. Okay, so a seller is contractually obligated to amend a previously delivered TDS, SPQ, or other disclosure if the seller becomes aware of an adverse condition not previously disclosed or any material inaccurate in such disclosure. So basically, it's just stating that if the seller forgot about something and the disclosure was already, the TDS has already been filled out, you would have to amend it, and we'll get into that on the next slide. You would have to amend it every time the seller has anything come up, like he forgot something or if something new happened to the property, that's where you would have to amend the transfer disclosure and the SPQ. Okay, buyer's right to rescind. So if the buyer's offer was already accepted and the transfer disclosure has already been submitted to the buyer's agent and the buyer, and something came up that's could affect the value or the desirability of the property, you would have to amend that TDS or SPQ, and the buyer then will have a right to rescind once he gets that amendment and stuff. He has a couple of days to rescind. So that's pretty basic as well. Delays between listing and selling, seller disclosure. Okay, so when you list the property, the TDS and the SPQ will be filled out as normal, but the listing might take 6 months on the market, and we see this a lot. It's happening a lot more often now than a couple of years ago. But during that duration, something might change that will affect the value or desirability of that property. So it's a very good practice that after 6 months, let's just say you get an offer, you might want to send that TDS and SPQ back to the seller and have the seller review it for its accuracy and also acknowledge that it's the same. Or if it's not, then you would do an addendum to that SPQ or the TDS with the new disclosure or any item that's that would be an addition to the TDS or SPQ. So that's pretty basic. Now, in addition to that, during that duration, let's say in the same instance, you list it and then 6 months later you get an offer, you might want to also contact any of the third-party disclosure reports like an NHD or if you have a home inspection or any other report, and just ask them to verify that nothing has changed. So, or just get an updated report. They won't charge you for it, so it's better just to get an updated report and then send that to the buyer's agent for the buyer's review. Okay, and then how to modify a previous disclosure. Okay, so in that same instance, if you have to modify a TDS or SPQ, basically just get an addendum. Make sure you check the box at the top of the page marking the addendum to it, so it could be a part of the TDS or SPQ. We don't have a sample of that right now, but it's pretty basic. If you look at the addendum at the very top, it'll indicate what this addendum is going to be attached to. You can even write it in TDS or SPQ. Okay, that's very important because that's going to bind the two documents together. And I think that's pretty much it. Michelle, do you have any questions or anything to add pertaining to these disclosures?
No, on the TDS, the first page, there's a checkbox, and generally you're going to check no additional disclosures provided. But like he said, after the fact, there could be something, and you might have already checked that box. So you're going to need to marry, just as he said, those forms together. So I think you explained that pretty well. Yeah.
So what we just went over is just redisclosure in the event that something changed. That's basically what we just went over.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the steps of a transaction. I am going to go into, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I misspelled rescind. Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm gonna go over the buyer's agent's steps in a real estate transaction, and I'll hand it over to Michelle, and she'll go over the seller steps. Now, this is just a basic process of a typical real estate transaction. This is not how every transaction is gonna go. There might be other portions or particulars in a transaction where you would have to know where to put a certain process and when to put it in there. But for generally speaking, this is how a typical real estate transaction would go. If you have some of those particular transactions, just contact me or Michelle, and we'll go over how to process that. But basically, this is a buyer's step of a typical real estate transaction, which a buyer will locate a realtor. Okay, that's, you know, a buyer wants to buy property and, you know, chooses Jeffrey as his or her agent. Make sure your buyer is pre-approved. Nobody wants to do work and then find out that this buyer is not approved and is not qualified to buy or purchase a home. Okay, so make sure the buyer is the funds are sourced, the down payment, his credit's pulled, his income is verified. That's what the pre-approval process is. It's way different from being pre-qualified. Pre-qualified means that he spoke to a lender, and based on their conversation, he's qualified to buy a home. That does not have any weight in the process of buying a home. You have to be pre-approved. A lender has to verify their documents, their income, their credit, and make sure that they're going to be able to close the transaction. Okay. So after the buyer is pre-approved, you as a realtor should interview your buyer. And but what I mean by interview is, okay, what is it that you're looking for? A single family residence? Is a townhouse okay? You know, condos, you want it on the top floor, you don't want neighbors, you need a yard, how many bedrooms do you want? This is very important because you're going to waste time and you're going to frustrate the buyer if you're going to start looking for properties that are not what he or she wants. So make sure you understand your buyer's needs and desires, so that way you can start searching. Okay, work smart, not hard. Then once you interviewed your buyer, then you start looking for properties. That you would go on the MLS and start looking for properties. You know, that's you should have your credentials and learn how to use the MLS. Okay. The realtor searches for properties. The realtor searches for the property selected, and then he schedules properties to be shown to the buyer. Make sure you talk to your buyer and say, okay, Saturday, okay, we're going to choose like 4 or 5 homes. Which 4 or 5 do you want to look for? And then you have to contact the listing agent and make sure that you can show these properties. Some are vacant, some you have to make appointments. So make sure you coordinate that and have time frames and let the buyer know of the schedule as well. Okay. Hopefully, you know, the buyer chooses 1 or 2 homes that they want to write an offer on, and the realtor writes an offer for the buyer and sends it to the listing agent, okay, along with all the disclosures. Moving on. The next steps, when making an offer, make sure you check with the lender to ensure the contingency periods. Okay, this is very important because if you want to ensure or increase the odds of getting your offer accepted, and you want to decrease the amount of days for loan contingency or an appraisal contingency, make sure that you're going to be able to get that satisfied. So contact your lender and make sure that you allocate enough time for the lender to get the loan approved and also get the appraisal completed and stuff. Right now, I think the turn times are a lot better, but back in a couple of years, a couple of years ago, you know, the lender needed 21 days to close a transaction or to even get it approved. But with technology nowadays, you know, the process is a lot faster, so they're able to to get this done a lot faster. But nonetheless, make sure you're speaking to the lender. Sometimes you choose a lender, sometimes the buyer has his own lender. So just make sure you can communication with them before you're making the offer. Say, hey, is 10 days okay for loan approval? No, give me 7 more days just to be sure. Okay. So don't put yourself or your buyer in that kind of predicament. After that, you're going to go back. Your offer might get accepted the way it is, or you might have to go through counter offer. Seller is going to counter you back, then you counter the seller back. This could go back and forth, several times. And actually the RRs are not going to be in this process. I'm sorry if this comes afterwards. So this is just the counter offer period. The RR and the RRR come after the transaction is accepted and it's in the investigative period. So the offer is accepted and it is now a valid contract. Okay. So once it's a verbal acceptance or you get the seller's signatures, all parties execute it, you got a valid contract. Okay. Once you get that offer accepted, send the RPA and all counters immediately to the lender. Don't wait on this, okay? Because most of the time, most of the delays in the escrow pertain to the loan, okay? So the faster you can get the lender the paperwork that he needs to get started, so he can start contacting the buyer and the listing agent to schedule an appraisal, the faster you're going to close that transaction, okay? And the least problems you're going to have. Send a copy of the RPA counters and required forms immediately to the TC to create a transaction into SkySlope. RTC here is Anna, so that's who you would send that offer to. Email it to her. Make sure you email her all the RPA and all the counters, any and all documents that you have pertaining to that transaction. Just send them to her, okay? Escrow is now opened and title prelim is ordered, if not already done so. As a listing agent, Michelle will get into that. You should have that prelim ordered once you get the listing signed, the listing agreement signed. So that way you can know if there's any problems with the property or the seller. But in this case, if the seller does have the prelim, then you just get a copy of it. If not, this is the best time to order the prelim as soon as escrow is opened. The buyer agent provides escrow and buyer's deposit. So within 3 days of acceptance, you need to get your buyer's deposit into escrow. Okay. So don't hold on to that check. Get it sent to escrow. Most of the time right now, it's through wire. So just have your buyer contact escrow, get the wire instructions, and then wire it directly into escrow. Okay. Buyer's agent is sure to get all seller disclosures within 7 days. Okay. So once escrow is open, ask the seller's agent to get you all the seller's disclosures. Okay. Pretty simple. Buyer to review, approve, and sign initial all seller disclosures within 17 days, unless modified in the RPA. Okay, so once you get those documents and forms and disclosures from the seller's agent, then it's your duty to give them to the buyer for them to review and accept, sign, and return. Okay. Some of the seller disclosures can and include the TDS, the SBQ, which we discussed just previously, the prelim, the NHD, any HOA documents, if it's a condo or a townhouse, solar, or any other applicable disclosures to the property. There might be a septic tank there. I don't know, Michelle, what other thing you can pop up?
Yeah, just like it depends on where the property is, but the biggest hangup has been the solar, but now they've provided that disclosure, that the seller has to fill out to give to the buyer. So if the buyer's agent knows there's a solar system there or sees the panels and they didn't get that disclosure, just make sure you're asking. That's the main hangup that I've seen lately.
All right, and buyer return all executed seller disclosures. I just went over that. Correspond with the lender to ensure appraisal has been ordered and loan is in the normal process with no foreseen issues. Okay, so constantly be in contact with the lender. Just, every couple days, hey, Mr. Lender, is everything good? All right, we're on time. Okay, thank you. That's it. So that way you're aware of it and everything, the transaction goes smoothly, okay? Reiterate to the lender of the contingency periods pertaining to the appraisal and the loan. So let him know, just remind him, hey, next Friday, the loan contingency is up, so are we good? Yes, we're good. Or, oh my God, thanks for reminding me. I should be fine, but it's gonna be tight. So just remind him. So it's your duty to stay on top of your transaction, okay? Don't leave it to other people. Even though the appraiser, the lender is his responsibility to do the loan in a timely manner, but it's still your transaction. It's still your buyer. So you should be on top of every aspect of the transaction. It is the agent's responsibility and duty to stay connected, constantly with all parties, ensuring a smooth transaction. I just went over that, okay? All right. Schedule a professional home inspection and termite inspection within the contingency periods, okay? So as soon as you open escrow, the clock starts, and this is two aspects of the transaction in which you should get done rather soon, like within the first week of the transaction or days, which is a home inspection and termite, because you might have issues with the home, or it might have termite damage, and that's where you would have to negotiate back and forth with the seller and the seller's agent as far as the repairs or credit. And also the termite report might have some issues that will affect the lender and the loan. So you want to get all these reports in as fast as possible, so that way you can review it, all parties can negotiate, and possibly get the termite completed so that there is no issues with the loan. Your loan, if there is termite damage that needs to be done, the loan cannot be closed until that termite work is completed. Make sure you order these inspections with ample time for the inspector to generate the report and the buyer to review. So it's not just getting the inspections, you still have to review them with your buyer, send them to the seller, and the seller has to review them, and then if you have to negotiate, you negotiate. So this can be a time, it can consume a lot of time and days. So you want to get these reports done soon, okay? Sooner is better. Don't delay, and stay on schedule. So I like to utilize a schedule or calendar for each transaction. I like to use calendars. So, you would put the 12th would be the loan contingency, and then appraisal contingency on this day, and its close of escrow should be on this day. Avid would be on this day. So that way you have a clear I'm sorry, Sean, to everyone. Okay. That way you have a clear picture of how the transaction should go and what days are your contingency periods, okay? Review and discuss the reports with your buyer, okay? Send a listing agent any RRs. We went over that, okay? So you're just gonna go back and forth until everybody agrees upon the repairs or credit. Negotiate with the listing agent and seller for any repairs. We went over that. Ensure that the property does or does not require a city inspection. This is also important too, and it should be done as soon as escrow is open. And if the city inspection is required on this property, not all cities require it, but there are some. ask the listing agent and the seller to give you that report, okay? Move on. Continue to stay in touch with the lender and get status updates. I keep putting this in there because it's important, because the lender is typically the one that delays everything. So you want to make sure you're in constant communication with them, okay? Removal of any contingencies required, caution, and ensure the buyer understands the removals. Okay, don't just remove contingencies. You have to discuss it with the buyer, and he has to understand what that means. Okay, so just and make sure that you are removing those contingencies if the loan has been approved or the appraisal has been satisfied. Okay. Loan will get approved, the loan gets approved and the appraisal is satisfied of value, okay? This is a big sigh of relief for everybody when this happens, okay? It is now recommended to remove loan and appraisal contingencies, okay? I do not recommend removing the loan or appraisal contingency prior to the loan getting approved or the appraisal coming in at value, because anything could happen, okay? But if you're put in a situation, there's delays, that decision has to be your buyer's decision, okay? Once all final buyer inspections are completed and signed off by the buyer, repairs are done, okay? Lender will clear the loan to close. That's called a CTC, and coordinate with escrow for loan documents, okay? You don't need to do anything in this step, but just letting you know that's what happens. Escrow will coordinate with the buyer to execute the loan documents and arrange for the closing. Then the lender will fund the loan, okay? And then, is that when the transaction closes? No, okay, that's called the funding. Title will record the transaction. That is when it closes, okay? So when a transaction closes is when it records. Then the buyer receives the keys. Agent reminds the buyer to switch utilities, okay? So make sure your buyer turns on the utilities as soon as title records, okay? That way they have power, water, and so forth, and be able to move in most cases. You know, sometimes the seller stays in there, but that's a whole different issue and stuff. But typically in this process, this is how it would work. Escrow generates a closing statement and issues broker commissions, okay? And then the agent gets paid. That's the most exciting part for an agent. Agent congratulates the buyer on their new purchase. And then the most important part of the transaction, or for you to continue getting business, agent stays in constant communication with the buyers for future business and referrals, okay? That's where you're gonna get future business. So in a buyer's step-by-step transaction, that's typically how it works. However, this is not how it works for every transaction. Every transaction is unique. So, but we just wanted to go over the basic concept of a transaction. So I'm going to hand it over to Michelle so she can go over the seller's steps.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
How do you know if you need if the city's inspection is required? Do we have to go to the city?
Well, most of the time, the listing agent or the seller will already know that. But yeah, there's a list of cities that require it, and that's, you're just going to have to be familiar with it. But most of the time, the seller will know about that because they need the inspection before it can close. Is that accurate, Michelle?
Yeah. I think some of the title companies have prepared a pretty good list, Lorraine, but I don't, you know, like, because I've had things bite me later, you know, so many years in business. For me, I'm always going to check. I'll call the city. Like there's some cities that just have, they're going to come and make sure you have a garage, you know, for off-street parking in certain impacted areas. So you and I wouldn't normally know that. So I call the city and I ask. If I'm the
Okay.
listing agent, I'm gonna take that responsibility and call the city and ask, you know, and as a buyer's agent, it's probably a good idea for you to do that as well, because you always want to be working for your client the best way possible. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
Michelle, hi, good morning. This is Oscar. Angie from First American, she put out a list of the cities that
Yeah.
require that.
Yeah,
And
I
you
gotta
sent me
find
the,
that.
computer room.
It's very good. Yeah. Oh, okay. We have one hanging up. Okay, we'll disseminate that to everybody. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I'm like a list person. That beautiful presentation done by Ruben. It was really nice.
Here-
So the listing agent, there's a lot of back steps before you get selected to be a listing agent. As we all know, that's the prospecting and, you know, reviewing the property and all of that. But this is more about the transaction steps when you are going into a transaction. So just bear in mind, of course, there's a lot of pre-steps to even getting the listing, like you've been prospecting for a while, you know, following up with your leads. So this is merely the transaction, not the prospecting side. Okay, so the seller is going to go ahead and select the agent. And congratulations to you, the agents. You're now ready. You prepare your listing agreement. You're ready to get it signed, have the MLS input form signed as well by the seller. I like to go in person. I think, you know, maybe I'm a bit old school, but I think like these types of things, even if you've met with them prior and you have already went over things with them, I think, you know, try to do the listing agreement when at all possible in person, even if you've already been there prior, because they may have some questions that pop up, and it's nice to be in person and, you know, show them your appreciation for that business and their trust in you. So right here, right off the bat, you'll see that I've added check with the city your listing is located in to see if there's a city report. If required, if there is, make sure you're ordering the inspection or report early in the process. I would say before you even hit escrow. Some of the 9A reports out of the city of Los Angeles could take 10 days or more. So you can't do a fast close if that's, you know, if you're wanting to provide the report, which we always recommend. I know that you can shift the responsibility to a buyer, but we recommend that you have the report so the buyer would know what they're agreeing to. So please have those reports in. Like I said, you can call the planning department of the city. I learn every day something new. Some cities will have little requirements, and you need to make sure you understand. We will get that list that Oscar mentions, it's hanging in our room, and send that out. But please don't just rely on a list, do your own check as well. You can also ask your escrow officer to see if they have any input into that city. So if the property that you're listing resides in an HOA, order the documents early. There may be a cost. You're going to need to get the money from the seller, or they can pay their HOA directly. So if there's any leased or lien items, which could be a solar system, or I've seen water softener systems that are leased or liened, make sure that you let the seller know that you're going to need to have the contract and information on those as well, and have those in your file and be ready. So if you notice there's leased or lien items, you can certainly ask them. Maybe it's something you wouldn't know the water softener was leased or lien. So make sure you're asking them if there's any of those items in the house. Okay, so also schedule your professional pictures or take them yourself. I wrote, I really believe in having professional pictures. We do have leads to photographers. It's not super expensive, but what it does for you is your listing looks so professional, and they just can take angles that I think, unless we're professional, it's hard for us to mimic a professional photographer. So for us, we always order a professional photographer, but I'll leave that up to you. And right here early in the game, please get the preliminary title report and NHD report ordered. If these cancel, you're not going to have, if something happened with the deal, you're not going to have to pay for them. Reason we want you to have them early on is if there was something on the prelim, some kind of lien or something like that, that the seller wasn't even aware of. You need to be reviewing that report with them. I always grab the prelim, look at it, highlight it. Even if I don't see anything, I will call the title officer, not the title rep, but the officer. It'll be right on the front of the prelim who to call, and ask them, is there anything I should be looking out for? So as a listing agent, you should be reviewing that quickly, calling the title officer, asking if there's anything that you should be looking out for or any documentation that you'd need to provide on any of the items from the seller. NHD report, same thing, be looking at it, just give it a quick review. I always order the environmental and the tax comes with it. So make sure those two things are ordered right away. You'll save yourself a lot of headache later if there was something on that prelim that you could have been working on clearing while you're marketing the property. So when you get your listing agreement fully executed, turn that in with pictures, description of property to Denise for Alhambra or Perla for Arcadia offices. And also at that time, you're going to turn in a sign up order form to either person. Now, if you're trying to put a sign up at a condominium complex or townhome complex, I'd make sure I was checking, if they have some particulars on that. I'll give a quick call to the HOA and see, because I have in the past had signs put up and then they said you didn't put it up right. So for me now, I'll just check and make sure that there's no issues, or if they have a specific place, or if they're even allowed, so just check with the HOA and make sure that you let them know the size of your sign that you'll be ordering it up. So once the MLS is input by your office, make sure that you go into the MLS and review it. Our listing coordinators do a really good job for our offices, and I've seen, very accurate details, but sometimes the way we've written it, we think we've said it one way, and maybe they interpreted another way and it was typed in differently, or you missed some check boxes. So please make sure that you take the responsibility as a listing agent to review the input once it's in the MLS. And if you have any required changes, be sure and coordinate with our listing coordinators, which would be Denise or Perla. So schedule your open houses if you're going to be doing open houses, and ask the listing coordinators to put the open house on the MLS, and they can click a box on the MLS and mark it public. So that date and time hits the internet. You know how the listings show on multiple different platforms. If you mark this public, it's going to show on all those platforms, which will greatly help your open house attendance. So now you've received some offers. You're going to meet with the seller to go over all the offers. Go through each offer. You can make a sheet for the offers. If you have multiple offers on one property, it may be a good idea to prepare a sheet on each offer to go over the particulars of them. Just a quick, word perfect sheet should be fine. And then you're going to prepare the counter offers. So, and they're either going to be multiple or, one counter offer going back, and send back to the buyer's agent. Make sure on the back of the offer that you're always checking the box subject to the attached counter offer. Don't forget to check that box. So if the seller is electing not to make a counter offer, make sure on page 15 that you're filling out the offer not accepted box. There's an offer not accepted box. Have the seller initial it, and then it's going to ask for a date that the offer was presented. So when you're meeting with the seller, you can do this all at once. If they say, hey, no, that's too far out of the park, or I don't like their terms, maybe they have a contingency to sell a home and the seller doesn't want to have that type of offer. So, but make sure that you do this. And the reason why is because we want to show the other agent that we indeed did present it. And now when we get into a multiple counter situation and the seller has elected not to counter, we always have this page filled out. then you can attach that to a brief email and say, dear, whoever the agent is, after careful consideration by the seller has elected to move forward with another offer, or has not, or you could just say has not elected to counter on your offer. You know, that's it. So one sentence to the other agent. We should always have that professionalism and be courteous and let them know so that they know where they stand. So I always attach that page when I'm sending those types of emails that the seller has initialed, and I have the date that the offer was presented on that form. So now the seller will be selecting the buyer. You're going to notify the buyer's agent that they've been selected and send them a fully executed contract and all applicable counteroffers on that transaction. You can a buyer's agent should send it, as Ruben mentioned, to the lender. But for me as a listing agent, I'm also going to make sure I'm getting that over to the lender, because I want to act very quickly. I don't want the lender to even lose 10 hours. So I'm going to act quickly and make sure that the lender has that, as well as escrow. So you're going to send the purchase agreement again over to escrow, ask them to open up escrow, and if you already have the preliminary title report, you can scan escrow a copy, and you can certainly let them know that you already have an NHD report. And as we mentioned before, if these reports are older because the property was on the market for a bit, the NHD report is really easy. Just to call your NHD provider and ask them to send you an updated, you know, they'll update that report. It's not going to cost you anything. And then you can also let your title rep know that you're opening escrow to go ahead and look at the prelim that they provided you. If there's any changes or updates, they'll provide that, a copy to you and one to escrow. So monitor when you're open to escrow. I know our good escrow officers will also be looking out for the initial deposit, but it's good as a listing agent to be in the habit of putting it on your calendar. Make sure that you know when that is due within the 3 days, business days, mind you. Weekends don't count for a deposit. That is the only thing in the contract that counts by business days. So remember, it's due within 3 business days unless you've modified it. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. Escrow will email you and let you know that it's received. They're normally going to send you a copy of the wire, or however they put the deposit into escrow. You will have evidence of that, and that will be sent to you by escrow. When I receive those, it's nice to let the seller have a copy, because it shows that you're on top of your game, makes them feel comfortable that the initial deposit is in, so you can also send them evidence of that. Be ready right away when you open escrow to send all of those disclosures to the buyer's agent, including the prelim and NHD, any HOA documents. Now remember, HOA documents need to come directly from the source. What do I mean by that? By the HOA management needs to come directly from the source. Even if the seller had HOA docs that he or she just got 3 months ago, please don't provide those to the buyer's agent. We don't know if there's been updates. You always want a fresh set. It needs to come directly from the source, okay? And the HOA documents, if you haven't already ordered them, escrow can order them. There's generally, like I said, going to be a fee, and they're going to be requesting that fee from the seller. So the buyer upon request of buyer's agent, you need to schedule with them. The buyer's agent will let you know, hey, we have a professional home inspection, termite inspection ready to go. So make sure you're coordinating with the seller for the date. If the house is not vacant, go ahead and accompany the buyer's agent to the inspection. Even if it's, try to go to all the inspections if you can. So that would be good as a listing agent. You should try to show up to all of the inspections if you can, and, be there to represent your seller. So you're going to receive most likely a request for repair after the buyer has received the inspections, And a copy of the home inspection report should be accompanying that. And if they're asking for termite work, they're going to also add the termite report. So if it's required, if they've indeed submitted a request for repair, you're going to discuss the items the buyer is requesting for repair or credit. So the seller has choices. They can either issue a credit, or they can repair it, or they can not agree. So they can go 3 different ways. So make sure you're communicating with the seller. And generally sellers, they're going to do some items. So just make sure you're going over each item with them. Now, we can't advise them on cost or anything because obviously we're not contractors. Our job is to be a real estate agent, but just explain the report to them. Please give them an in-color report. It's easier to see. So usually the inspection companies will send us over a link for a colored copy. Make sure that that's what you're giving to the seller so they can see everything in color. So listing agent, the appraiser should be calling you directly. So if you haven't heard from that appraiser in a timely manner, make sure that you're contacting the buyer's agent and the lender direct yourself. So if you only have 17 days and by day 7 you haven't heard anything, I would be calling and saying, how come the appraiser hasn't contacted me? So make sure that you're staying on track. As Ruben said, you make a calendar for each transaction and redline these days of when things are due. And also you can add in there when you should be following up to see why the appraiser hasn't called you directly for that appointment. So after you've done all of this checking, you want to ensure that the full contingency removal is received by the specified date in the contract. So normally you're going to be negotiating a request for repair and all of that. So just keep in mind that the buyer can remove contingencies in full or in steps. So if they have not giving you a full contingency removal or let you know that on some items they may need an extension of time, and if the seller agrees, that's fine. But if you have not gotten any contingency removal, talk to the seller, make sure you're keeping them in this process, and then you're going to prepare a buyer notice to perform for the seller to sign and send it to the buyer's agent. So before, I send a notice to perform, I'm in pretty heavy contact with the buyer's agent. Hey, we need this. If not, the seller's most likely going to deliver a notice to perform. So what's the status? So just, be professional and courteous and keep in touch with that other agent to try to push them along and find out if there's any problems, have an open communication with them so you can find out how you can work together and solve anything. If there's a problem that can be solved together, make sure you're asking that as well. Once you receive full contingency removal, it indicates that the buyer is on the way to close and the property according to the contract. So the verification of property, that should be scheduled by the buyer's agent, but make sure that if you haven't heard from the buyer, that you're giving them a call and saying, hey, let's do this verification of property. Let's do it at least 5 days prior to close of escrow, and make sure that you're letting the seller know that the property needs to be delivered vacant. Please don't leave, big cans of trash or debris about the property. So, as a listing agent, you should be preparing the seller for how to deliver the property, which is free of debris and personal items. Make sure they clean out the property of all their personal items, and please don't leave a bunch of debris in the garage or in the backyard or things like that. So you're going to make sure that you've prepared the keys for the buyer. So I like to give the keys to escrow so escrow can deliver them to the buyer's agent or the buyer direct, because after all, they're preparing a closing package. So make sure that those keys are there ahead of your close date. I always give them to escrow, and I make sure that I send a quick email CCing the escrow company as well as the buyer's agent that the keys will be handed over, and any remotes that are due to them at close of escrow and to please coordinate with the escrow officer. Make sure that you're reminding the seller to shut off all utilities in their name by the close of escrow date. Advise the buyer's agent to have the buyer call the utility companies and have the utilities in their name. So the seller can call ahead of time once they are sure of the close date. And it's what they call a soft close, I guess, in the utility business, but they can call and tell them the scheduled date to shut off the utilities. And the buyer can call in right behind and tell them the day to put it in their name, so they don't have any interruption of service. So you want to make sure to remind the seller. I have seen instances where the seller forgot to turn them off. So make sure that you're reminding the seller, because it's very hectic when they're moving. So there could be things that they miss just because it's such a hectic time. And here, I already addressed this, make sure that you've already explained the expectations of delivering the property to the seller, all trash removed, personal property, leave items at the property which were agreed upon in the purchase agreement. So if they checked that they were going to leave the refrigerator, make sure they're leaving the items that were agreed to in the purchase agreement. And buyer's agents, make sure when you are performing your VP that you're looking for those items that were outlined and agreed to in the purchase agreement, that they are on the property as well. So the seller is going to sign the VP after the buyer sends it to them. Instruct right here the buyer's agent to collect the keys and required remotes from escrow. Now, if the seller is staying over the close of escrow date, even if it's 1 or 2 days, make sure you have the appropriate form in place, which is the CAR form, RLAS for over 30 days or more, or SIP for 29 days or less. Very important. If it's even COE +2, make sure you're providing a SIP for everybody to sign. So if you stay on track with the steps and make your calendars as we've suggested, you should have a pretty smooth transaction as from your side, because you are on top of your game. There's always things that can come up that you're going to need to manage, but just stay on track with your calendar. And if you need these lists, we're happy to send them out. Management will do everything we can to help you close your deal. If you have questions or anything happens during the deal, we're here as well. We have a lot of experience sitting in the building here. So, take advantage of that. We want to help you close. We want to be there with you. Or if issues come up, we want to help you navigate those issues. So I thank you very much. It's always my great privilege to be with all of you. And remember, as I've always said, you're never alone here at Coldwell Banker George Realty. We are with you every step of the way on all of your transactions. So thank you all.
Michelle, may I
Thank you,
ask you a
Michelle.
question?
Yes.
Michelle? In regards to the
Michelle.
city report,
Yeah.
we find that it should probably be ordered doing the listing side too, because it causes a lot of delays.
Which
with
Rich
escrow.
report? I'm sorry.
The city report.
Yeah, the listing agent has to have the seller order it.
Yeah, but what's happening is though they're not doing it on the listing side, and they're waiting, and sometimes they're waiting even after escrow has closed for some time to get that report. So it's causing a lot of delays in their closing. And truly,
Oh,
escrows are telling me they should be ordering it during the listing side so they can have
Yes.
enough time and have it.
yeah, because like we said, like me and you have just discussed a few days ago, Anna, the 9A report can take 10 days or more, right?
Yes, correct.
So if you weren't even aware that that was required and you sat and thought everything was going fine, then you have a problem because you're delaying your whole escrow. I totally agree. Anna, I'm with you, because a report could cost, I don't know, that one's $72.33, I believe, or even if it's up to $150, have the seller pay that money so nobody has that kind of stress. Just get it early.
Uh,
Right. I agree with you, Anna, totally.
And same thing with the prelim title report.
Yep,
Especially if it's in a trust or there's
Right.
issues, you want to, because they need more time to get that prepared. So really, they should be looking at doing, as you said, the NH3 report, the prelim, the city report.
correct.
Now, if they're not sure, they could simply, call an escrow company that they're familiar, that they work with, and they'll be happy to tell them, is it located in the city of LA? Is a 9A report required? So they'll know ahead of time.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's going to be little pockets of different cities. Like I said, one I had to call on. I didn't know that in one little pocket of that city, the city was going to come check for a garage. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a habit should be formed to reach out to the city or look at their website and see what's required just as agents. And we, like I say, we learn every day and we learn so much just by doing that. Thank you, Anna. Those are great reminders.
Yeah,
I have a question, Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Patricia. A question. So I went to show a property on Monday, and it was in Yucca Valley. Those areas over there.
Yes.
So the property has a propane tank, a gas propane tank, and it has a septic tank.
Yes.
So in regards to septic, I know that we have for FHA, when the loan is FHA, we have to get it certified by the seller, which is very common, and there's no issue by most sellers. It's okay. But when it comes to the propane tank, it was my first time showing that property with propane. So when it comes to that, what are the requirements for the propane tank? I mean, like, I never
I would, wow, that's a good question. I'm gonna see if there's a form because we do have the septic tank. There might also be the propane listed on that disclosure.
I believe there is,
yeah,
Michelle.
it has
Yeah,
both.
it should be right on
Yeah.
that disclosure, but it could be an issue and I'm not a lender, but I'm just gonna take a stab at this. I would, if there's a propane tank that's running the property, you might need to check with the lender too to make sure that's gonna fly, through the loan process, because I've never come up with that, come into
Yeah.
contact with that. But I'm happy to research that and make sure that we have a better answer than what I'm giving you right now. But I
Thank
would
you. I
let the
learned-
lender know.
Yeah, I did. I contacted Ruben and the lender both. So what
Right,
I learned also is that I thought the propane tank belonged to the seller, but in this case, for that particular property that I showed, it is leased.
right.
I didn't know. So we made it like subject to the lead seller providing. We made a contingent on seller providing all the lease information to the buyer in regards to the propane tank. I didn't know. I mean, I thought it was owned by the seller in this case, because I never dealt with that before.
Yeah.
Something new,
Yeah,
so
something new we learn every day. That's why at the top of the process, we're asking you to ask them if any leased or lien items. I didn't know that either, Patrice, because I haven't dealt with any propane tanks, but that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
also, if I don't think the payment would be very high monthly, but the lender needs to calculate that in too, as well as the solar system payments. So thank you for bringing that up. This is something that I have not dealt with.
And another thing, is there any way we can have a class on the 1031 exchange? Like when the classes
Yes.
that talk about the boots, the up and the down
Yes.
arm, all those, how many days we have. I know we have 45 days to locate a property once, and then how many days to close, which I believe is 3 months.
Right,
so-
and we can have Philip Atwin come. He owns a 1031 exchange company and he's an accommodator. I've personally been involved in deals with him. He's extremely knowledgeable. So yeah, we can schedule that with him. We do usually have him in once a year at our brokerage, so it's about time. Yeah, we'll get that scheduled.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much
Great
for all the
class.
information.
Great class. Okay.
Thank you.
So some of the questions on the chat box are pertaining to copies of today's training. We're gonna send out the step-by-step, both Michelle's and mine, out to everybody. And then also, it's also being recorded. So remember, you could always go to our YouTube channel and review this training again, okay?
Thank you.
And I believe there is a propane, form.
Yeah, I think it would,
I remember seeing it, so,
Yeah.
but most of the time, you want to contact your lender and make sure it's gonna, if you are acquiring a loan with that property, make sure it's gonna be okay for the lender, because if it's not, then you're stuck. So, it's not only just the inspection and your buyer being okay with the, property with the propane tank in this instance, but also make
Thank you.
sure
can you see my screen, you guys?
I can.
Okay, here's the propane. Yeah, it is. It's with the septic well, property monument propane tank, right here.
Yes, I saw that. So I
Okay.
did, I've seen that one, yeah. But and then I didn't know it was lease. So, but when I saw that form, it has two little boxes. It says lease or own, something like that, on the second page at the bottom.
Yes, it's right here. And make sure, since we're on this form, folks, if these things are on the property, please make sure that the seller's agent is providing you this disclosure, okay?
Okay. Right, thank you. Great.
One last thing too, for listing agents, when you're listing a property, I spoke to Angie and to Brandon, both with First American, one is NHD and the other one's Title. They're willing to give you, the prelim and the NHD report for free at the time of your listing appointment. So if you really want to cross your T's and dot your I's, you can have that even before you get the listing to present it to the seller. But worst case, as soon as the seller signs the listing agreement, order them. They're at no cost to you. They only get charged if it closes. So utilize your affiliates and what they're offering and get the prelim, like Anna was saying. There's sometimes issues. And then in addition to that, I'm going to locate that document that was provided by First American Title, indicating the cities, the current list that indicates the cities that require the inspection. And then I'll send that out to everybody. But nonetheless, you should inquire with the city if you are listing a property to make sure that a report is needed or not needed.
Ruben, excuse me, you can also Google it. You can ask which cities require a pre-sale inspection, and you can see the list. Like from the title companies, they have posted the list of all the cities that require the pre-sale inspection. So you can Google it. That's what I do all the time.
That is true, because Google knows everything,
Yeah, and you can see the list from the title companies right there on Google.
Thank God for Google, because we didn't have Google 20 years ago when I was.
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't know how lucky agents are these days.
We
All
are.
right. So do we have any other questions? We don't mind. I just want to make sure we get everybody's questions answered. All right. So remember, if you want to learn commercial, send me an email and I'll put you on the list. Okay. I don't want you calling me, emailing me afterwards saying that, oh, I didn't get a link or I didn't know about it. I'm reminding everybody. Okay. It's very.
Hey, Ruben.
Ruben,
Jeffrey.
okay, Ruben, let me ask you something. I sent you one. Did you get it?
Catherine, you're taken care of. You're good to go.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
One last thing I do want to add. This is very important for those of you that are going to be attending the Coldwell Bank, the commercial classes. I am designating all of those attendees that emailed me that are going to be attending the commercial class as a dual agent, commercial and residential. Okay, I'm changing your designation on Dash to be commercial and residential. However, it's your responsibility to contact CB Desk Help. Okay, so if you go to your CB Desk, there's a little icon at the top right corner, if I believe, and it has a help desk. There's a number there. Okay, if you need the number and can't locate it, call me and I'll send it to you, or email me. But you have to contact them and make sure that they put the commercial tiles in your CB Desk. Okay, If you do not have those tiles, you're gonna be lost in these classes, okay? There's CBCU, there's demographics, build out. There's like 5 or 6 commercial tiles. When I say tile, when you go onto CB Desk, there's a Moxie tile, there's a Dash tile. Those are tiles, okay? There's a series of commercial tiles that you're gonna be needing, okay? I sent out a list initially with the tiles that are gonna be needed. If you go onto your CB Desk and you don't see them, you have to call, don't call me because I can't help you with this. You have to call CB Desk Help and ask them to place those tiles in your CB Desk, okay? So
Okay,
don't,
Question.
Can you give us a number now?
okay, hang on one sec. I'm gonna give you the number right now. Get your pins handy, okay?
Okay,
Hang on.
So we have to do it before the class.
Yeah, because if he's gonna navigate through, let's just say, for instance, demographics is one tile. Demographics is a commercial tile that's gonna create a report for the demographics for a certain property, right? But if
Okay.
he's gonna dive into that and you don't have the tile, what good is that class for you? So you're gonna need to have access to these tiles. So you have a week and a half before the classes start. So I suggest you guys start now, call CB Desk, because it's not gonna be done overnight. It takes about 2 to 3 days to do it, okay? I've helped many agents do this already, and I don't mind helping you, but the best thing to do is to call this number, okay? CB Help Desk. It's 1-866. Michelle, can you put this in the chat as well?
Yes, let me chat, okay.
CB Desk-
1-866.
1-866-533-8995. Okay, when you call them, they're gonna ask for your name, maybe your ID number, your MLS ID number or something like that, I'm not sure. But just tell them that you need all the commercial tiles on your CB Desk, okay?
all of them, okay.
There's, I think, 5 of them. Here, write this list down, guys, okay? For sure, CBCU, that's Coldwell Banker Commercial University, okay?
Okay, CBCU, okay,
CBC dash, just like CB dash, CBC dash. Demographics. Build out. And CBC brand serve.
Branchard,
Brand serve, BRAND-SRV. They abbreviate. Brand serve is where you're gonna get all your marketing for a commercial, all your logos, all your imagery and stuff. So
okay,
there might be 1 or 2 more tiles that I'm forgetting right now, but if you just tell them that any and all commercial tiles, that would be the best. Even if you're missing 1 or 2 here or there, we can help you with that. But get these basics. Any questions regarding that?
no, thank
All
you.
right. All right, start now because you have a week and a half before the classes start, okay?
Hey, Ruben, I have a question, Jeffrey. Just one last question. I missed this one.
Yes, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the Google, you said about the Google city report. How do you Google? What are you going to Google?
Just when you're typing to Google, just type in like if you're talking to a person. So you would just put which cities in Southern California require a 9A city report, right, Michelle?
No, 9A is specific to
To LA.
LA's. Yeah, but you could just type in pre-sale reports.
Pre-sale
Required.
report.
Pre-sale inspection, that's what I do.
Pre-sale inspections. And
Okay,
then-
thank you.
And
Yeah,
then it should populate, and then you could just print it and keep it for your records. Now, it'd be a good thing to update that like every 6 months or so, because you never know when a city is going to require it or not,
Right, there could be changes, so I
Yeah.
really recommend that you get in the habit of calling.
Correct. Yeah, pre-sale inspection. Thank you. Got
Yeah.
it.
But for the sake of a seller and buyer's agent, when you're a seller, just make sure you call the city in which the property is located in and
Yeah.
ask. And ask.
Gotcha.
It's fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And,
Thank
and if in a buyer situation, you ask the selling agent, and if the selling agent didn't do it already for one reason or the other, then he or she can do it at that time. So just get in the habit of, whether buyer or seller agent, once the contract gets accepted, find out if if you need a city inspection, okay?
Thank you. Got it.
All right, guys. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you guys next Friday, okay?
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.